Righty. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me know if otherwise, and we will flip it over and get rolling on this stream. So yeah, how are we doing? Oh, I do have to get the chat set up here yet. Slacker. Let me do that here. Just hold with me a second while I do my pop-out chat and get the URL. I'm trying a new thing in YouTube. You're not making it easy for me, YouTube, are you? How do I get this from website? Screen settings, pop out, cookies, connection, security. Nope. All right. Give me just a second. Sorry for the delay, folks, and it's all right. I can work this out as people are coming on in, but I want to be able to get the chat on the screen here, and I tried the direct connect thing of OBS, and I figured that would bring that across, but apparently not. I do see you guys' chats there, and yeah, we'll get rolling here just in a moment. Make it here, connect. And I do have a video that will be coming out a little bit later today, hopefully after it renders, for setting up WTF OSD in the canvas mode and all that kind of good stuff. Pop out chat or MSP DisplayPort, I guess I should say, right? And how to render that on a widescreen format with Betaflight 4.4, which is in release candidate right now. So if you're not aware of that, let me see live chat right here, properties, paste that, and then we should be good. There we go. Bought time and sent it. So while I have this up, let's make you all aware that Betaflight 4.4 is now available. Let me go to here, Betaflight configurator. So yeah, if you're into that, they're releasing the release candidate #1 for the Betaflight configurator 10.9. So if you're into that kind of thing and checking it out, yeah, head on over to you saw me there do that Google search Betaflight configurator, and then you typically would want to go to the releases page. Should be first thing you see up on Google here, and then grab that configurator. The RC1, since it's a release candidate, for the configurator alone, I would highly recommend the best way to download this right now is not to install it on your computer, but grab this portable version of the configurator right here. And in that portable version, what it will allow you to do, as you can see, I can download that here, is that's actually all built and you don't need to install it. You can just unzip it to a folder. And then once that's unzipped, so obviously you can do that there, and then bring up, once it's actually done downloading, you can bring up your downloads page here. And once that loads here, it always takes a second on my computer for some reason. Every now and then it takes a little bit. But you can bring that up and unzip it. And then once you have this unzipped to a folder on your computer, you can simply, you can bring this over. So you just grab this entire folder at this level, drag it to your desktop. I'm not going to do that. You can figure that out. And then there is the executable right here that you'll see, and you just run it right from there. What that enables you to do is that this release candidate that we're seeing here is going to update. So you're going to have a 10.9 RC2, RC3, and then eventually there'll be a 10.9 stable release. So instead of having to re-download the new one and install it, you can just download the portable, unzip the new one, delete the old one. And then once the stable release comes out, then I would come into here and recommend doing the installer. But honestly, you don't need to. It's whatever you want to do there. But that's how I do it. So then I always have an installed version that is the stable release. It's usually one version old for me. And then the portable ones for when we're in release candidate stages. So yeah, check it out. Now, one thing you will see on there is that let me here, that when you go into the release candidate for the configurator, let me bring it up here. Takes just a second. But when you go into that and run it, you're not going to see the release candidates yet. For the firmware. So it's a release candidate on the configurator, but not the firmware just yet to flash to your flight controller. And the reason they're doing that is there is a new installer that's a part of Betaflight 4.4. So let me just manually trigger this here because I put my portable releases under this folder here. You can see I should have it right here. I'm just plugging a flight controller real quick. So if I plug in any old flight controller and I go to firmware update, you'll see in here some different options. And if it's your first time, I can do an auto detect on this flight controller, but then I'm still going to see the 4.3. If I click unstable releases, many times you'd go to this releases and release candidates to get the release candidates, but you still don't see 4.4 here. The reason being is this installer, so you'd actually have to get 4.4 now and anytime, honestly. You can hit development. Now these are the nightly builds, and you can see this is new here. Now, if you're a patron, you've seen this before because I had video out on this weeks ago about how this is a cloud building thing here. But if you're on the live stream and this is all new to you and for the patrons, Betaflight could use your help right now. So if you could simply, if you have some old flight controllers, the reason they're doing this in 2 stages is because of this cloud builder. The cloud builder is doing that to make space for the future for the firmware, because it seems to me, and it depends on the people that are actively working on it, that a decent amount of GPS functionality might be added to the firmware going forward. And to do that, we're going to need space to fit on these F4, F7s. Actually, the F7 has a little bit less space than the F405 flight controller boards. But even the H's, they have a ton of space. But just to fit on flight controllers. So they're going to this cloud-based platform to build. And with that, you see here, don't have my just noticed. There we go. Now I'm there. I'm like looking at the camera and you guys can't even see me. But it seems that the cloud-based the cloud-based platform is going to be needed for that extra space for all the GPS functionality. So with this, if you have some flight controllers, some spare ones around, or some that are on your quads, but you can do a backup first. So you click into your flight controller. Just do it real quick here. And before you would do, flash it up as a test, you'd go into the presets, make sure you save backup right here, so you can flash it back or load this later or flash it back or whatever you need, just so you have a backup if it's an active quad that you're flying. But with that, again, back to the project being able to use your help, is that to make sure that this will build for all the different flight controllers out there. A lot of progress has been made, but it's not just narrowing down some of the different features. It's also narrowing down some of the driver support. So, for example, here, this is Flash to add Flash support to the flight controller. So if you have maybe a whoop and you don't need this, you can just check that off. Then you don't need to have that Flash space. But if you have a flight controller with onboard Flash, you'd need to add that. But that in itself is not, in the past, we were Betaflight was loading all the drivers for all the different Flash chips available and the SD card support. Here it's getting even more specific that they're trying to figure out what flight controllers come with exactly what Flash chips and only load that one driver. Same thing for gyros. All the, in current releases of Betaflight, you get all the drivers for MPU gyros, ICM gyros, Bosch gyros, all that. Again, narrowing that down to, okay, if you have this flight controller, what exact gyro does that have on it? And then just loading the gyro driver for that. And then obviously if you don't need S-Bus support and you don't need Ghost because you're using Express LRS and you don't need Smart Port Telemetry because again, you're using Express LRS, you would just load Crossfire. So going in and helping the project just by trying to flash your flight controller with the new cloud builder. So you select the development, whatever your flight controller is, pick the 4.4, and then just pick whatever options you want here and hit load firmware online. It was behind me there. I should have went this way. There's this button, that button right there. And you can see what it will do here is it will start the build process for that. And if they're logging that on the back end, so if there's failures in the build process, it will trigger that. And that's why they want to go through this this two-stage thing. So just picking your flight controller and hitting load firmware online, and you don't even really honestly need to flash it. So that thing where I said, hey, make sure you save your settings, just do this part and help the project make sure we have a bunch of successful builds here. And then if it fails build, that will get logged on the backside, and the team will be able to see that and see why it's failing, things like that. So anyways, with that, let me check some questions here. See what we have. Any questions on that before we get into some log review stuff? For version Zulu, yep. Running suite, yep. Line. What do you think about 4.4 versus 4.3? Every year it gets better. The guys that contribute their time to Betaflight, they just amazing community asset, just like any volunteers that volunteer for things. Everything they bring is a great advancement. This cloud build feature, I think, is really great. I think that's going to pay. Usually the big moves of Betaflight, like the uniform targets, that took a lot of load off of some of those volunteers to maintain those targets, because now there's only like 4 or 5, maybe 8 targets, something like that. This is going to reduce it even further, because just little things like with Betaflight for any of the earlier versions, when we had those SBI receivers on the whoops, you had to have a special build with the onboard SBI receiver. Well, now you just pick Express LRS. So normal Express LRS UART, or you're wiring in the receiver to the UART, you pick Crossfire right here. But if you have an SBI receiver, you're going to pick the Express LRS right here. And then that will, like, you can do this at any time for any version of firmware. For any of the, if you ever want to check out any of the different pull requests that are down here, you can actually build those now. So that's really nice. And obviously it's going to pay a lot more dividends too once space is starting to fill up on these things. And, you know, just recognizing Betaflight, you know, iNav has a ton of features, but they don't support nearly the amount of targets that Betaflight does. So that's a big shift, big move, big fundamental thing. So I think that's great. The HD, my video coming out today on the HD availability for the WTF OSD and some of the other HD OSD elements, I think are great. How they built in, you know, Express LRS 3.0 into the build versions now, so you can just select that Express LRS. That's again great. So it's updated for that as well, for if you have the newest versions of Express LRS. Anti-gravity was improved. We have the it can land now with automatically with a failsafe if you have GPS. So if you totally lose your transmitter and it's not going to recover back, instead of it coming in for a crash landing, it will come over and land down. I'm sure you probably saw that video, so that's pretty cool. Bunch of other stuff. Chris Rosser just submitted I don't know if it's going to make it into 4.4, but some improvements in angle mode and how that's working for tracking of your sticks. So yeah, just little things getting better all the time. So Brandon, thank you for the portable version. Yes, makes it a lot easier to download that. I was always building it myself and putting it out there for patrons and whatnot, but now that it's in the nightly builds for the portable version, I appreciate that and you pushing for that. So Jesse asks, is there any of the gotchas between 4.3 and 4.4 in diffs? Not, I am pretty easy going with that. So I don't see any big gotchas other than you have to watch out for anti-gravity. So if you have 4.3 and have anti-gravity settings, so again, connecting back into here, and you are in the tuning tab, and then you customize anti-gravity here. Then when if you do a save, oh, sorry, right here, and you customize anti-gravity, then if you do a save of this and bring that forward in the 4.4, this setting is not, so the anti-gravity is your gotcha. Don't bring forward anti-gravity settings. That will be no good. It will mess your stuff up. I know I've been actively working on my presets to make updates for 4.4, getting them a little, that is not the one. So it's tuning presets. So like going into here, getting them a little bit more established with different filter options, things like that. But basically the same, just having different levels of filtering, like low build quality, medium build quality, high build quality. And that is, I don't know how else to put that. Because some people will say, well, I build quads great. It's like, yeah, but that also includes equipment. So if you build a great quad and your soldering is amazing, but you have a janky frame, even that you maybe paid a lot for, like, it's still a kind of a medium build quality, even if you built it really well. So that's really what it relates to. If you have a high quality frame, which doesn't mean you paid a lot for it, Just means it's known to be high quality. Like a Source 1 is a pretty good frame. You don't have to pay a lot for it. A Martian 2 is a great frame from, I don't think they make them anymore, but you don't have to pay a lot for that. It's like 20 bucks. A lot of the Armatan, the frames that were single plate on the bottom, those were hundreds of dollars or more, and those were not good frames ever. So not all of them, some of them. But anyways, so yeah, just putting in different things there. So I've been working on that. I know the anti-gravity piece was one of the things I had to really watch for there. Everything else, so you can see this is 4.4 on this flight controller. Everything else is pretty much the same. Obviously, the screens change. You can see your TPA is now under this screen for your profile settings. So it goes along with your PID profile. So if you have multiple PID profiles, your TPA will change with those. Before it was under the rate profiles, which is dumb. That's a legacy thing that, it when it got coded like that 6-7 years ago, it just never got changed until now. But nothing's different there. I'm trying to think of anything else that's specifically different. From version to version, people say that the PIDs, you can't use your old PIDs. That's not been true for I don't think that's been true since I've been doing FPV. They're always the same scalar gains. Oh, except for y'all. Y'all changed the one time. So PIDs are all the same. You can always use your old numbers. Slider position should be the same for 4.3 to 4.4. So none of that's changed. The intent in Betaflight is for this not to change going forward. We spent a lot of negotiations, myself and CTZ Chris Thompson, to come to this I'll say compromise. We're both in support of it. This is a good setup for a different way people's tune. It's not exactly the way I would have done it. It's not exactly the way he would have done it. But we were the two kind of debating it quite a bit, and I think this is a good measure for the best for the community and everything, because it's not maybe the way I would have done it exactly. Maybe isn't the best. Same thing for his version as well. This should be all the same as well, filters, so that's the big stuff. I think I did see OSD stuff. Some of the elements didn't come forward because I did try to load. I have to look at that, but that's a minor thing. But I did try to load like my USD or OSD presets, and that did not. Like if you go into here and I load this preset, I think I get a ton of errors. Yeah, so I got to go through. So a lot of these OSD, these variables must have changed their name. So I got to go through that. So if you try to bring forward your OSD, but that's not, I don't know. I don't know if I would call that a gotcha. I guess it's a gotcha. You have to set it up, but it's not going to hurt anything. The TPA thing could throw you for a loop, or the anti-gravity thing. So watch out for that stuff, Jesse. Other than the OSD and the anti-gravity, I think that's it. Again, I usually just, when I upgrade, and people might cringe when they say this, I usually just save my 4.3 backup, then I come back in here after I upgrade and load it, and then just like it showed there, when you load it and hit save, it will give you these errors, and you go down through there, and obviously if I see it and they say like set OSD, I just kind of ignore them and whatnot. When you see these, the key with this is when you see this red line, that means it could not find that variable. That's actually good. I wish we'd get into a practice, or wish the Betaflight guys that contribute a lot. I don't contribute directly to code changes as much as really the other guys do. More testing and bigger changes, and I've done a bunch of stuff in or done some things in the configurator, things like that. But anyways, I wish we'd get into a spot where if we're going to change a variable, or how the variable works, that the variable gets renamed. Because then in this scenario where it can't find that, it just doesn't do anything, and you just get the default. It's the other scenario where, like anti-gravity, the value of anti-gravity and how it works is different, but the variable name for anti-gravity has not changed. So if you apply your old value, if you've customized it, it will be different. Um, Whereas if it would just error out because the variable name changed, then you just get the default. So, anyways, go down through those if you do load them and just look for the reds. And then if you, obviously, if you don't, if you're getting worried, you don't know what it is, then just hit cancel. Um, yeah, new GPS screen maybe 18. Okay, half hour in here and get some log stuff looked at. What does classic mode? Oh, let's. King of Jester 23 asks, what does classic mode do for this uh, builder here? So the classic mode, what that does is it, instead of parsing out different features, that gives you everything. So if you're having issues when 4.4, if you're going to load it now, say the Flash or the Cloud Builder doesn't, comes back with an error. So you help the team. Now they can log that and see that and kind of get a tally of all that kind of stuff. But you actually really like, now what do I do? We can always come up here and hit classic and then hit load, load online again, right there. And that will give you the whole enchilada. So for right now, you should be fine because it's going to fit. I think it fits. If you have an F411, maybe it doesn't, but I think everything else it fits. It will fit on the F405. Not a lot of people know that the F405 has more space than the F7. So it will fit on the F405. It will fit on the F7s and Hs. F3 support's gone. The F411, I think, is on the edge. So it should fit almost all of them right now. As we go into the future, that's probably going to dither off. That if you try classic mode, you don't have a bigger flashed flight controller, it might not work, but that's what that is. Yeah, Simon O'Fly says the GPS rescue mode be update. Yeah, definitely check it out. Um, it works great, and it seems like there's going to be a bunch of updates to that going forward. Is there any MQZ FPV? Is there any uh, flight? What's he say here? Is there any flight improvements codes in the upcoming 4.4, or is it just features? It's the anti-gravity is flight improvements, so check that out. I'm trying to think if there's any other. The mixer, I believe I have a video on it. In my Patreon, I have a what's cooking in 4.4. I'm trying to remember what's in there. But the mixer had code improvements. There's nothing to show you on the screen for the mixer. Anti-gravity has code improvements to make it work better. I haven't tested that myself, but these guys really look at things. I will be doing some content on that just to show the improvement. I think the filters are all the same. You can go lower with this min here now. But that's just a setting thing. The core of the filters didn't change. And then the acro mode I talked about. Chris Rosser just submitted. I don't think that's in there yet. That some potentially significant improvements in angle mode and how that works. Let's see here. What else we got? Be nice, like if I pick. Yeah, so you're saying about Glorious Quads talks about some hints here. So there is these tooltips on the sides, but there is some, I don't disagree. Like how would you, if you're totally late to it, like Ghost is pretty straightforward. If you need Ghost, there's Ghost. But this thing where Express LRS really uses Crossfire, I could easily see a lot of people picking this, taking that out, that out, that out. I don't. They probably won't even know what the heck smart port telemetry is. Oh, here. Temperature using. Yeah. So I don't know that they'll know what smart port telemetry is. I mean, you need that with FR Sky stuff. But I could easily see people picking this because they have a Express LRS receiver and it not working. Um, I wonder if it will work actually. That's a good question. I wonder if it will because this would load Crossfire. You know, you can give that a shot. I'd have to verify. This may work for Express LRS both ways. If you have a SBI and a Crossfire, I'm gonna talk to them about that. Um, I think it will because this should be loading the Crossfire protocol because it needs it for the SPI receiver. So it should be there, and you'd probably then support Express LRS both ways, USB connected or technically SPI receiver connected. So yeah, I'll look into that, make some content on that. All right. Any other questions on this? And I really should get into some log review stuff because since it was tuning hour, kind of got off track here. It's fine. Yeah, good. The one big thing to look for if you are Brandon, if I would think you're like me, and most all your quads have some sort of back blocks support. Is do when you connect, if you actually flash it, if it builds correctly, that's good. But actually flash some of them if you can, and does when you connect, does it have up here at the top? Does it have the flash chip? I know a lot of stuff in the past when I was doing it, I had to do the classic because although it was flashing fine, when I come in here, it was like there was no flash, and I know there's obviously there was flash on the board. It just the driver wasn't loaded. That's a lot of the stuff they're trying to weed through is um, flash issues. Like, is all the stuff there? Like, does your gyro connect? So it is helpful. I mean, one part is just building the cloud builder to make sure it builds, but another part is actually flashing some of this and like, is the gyro there? Is your if it has a magnetometer, is the magnetometer showing up? That's probably unlikely. Barrow is I don't know of any flight controller with a magnetometer, but and there's a couple, but a barometer, does that showing up correctly? You know that if there's a lot of them with that. Uh, so like when you turn these settings on and hit save and reboot, does it recognize those if it already has a barrel? And is the flash showing up? And if not, um, I guess I would suggest we would put it as an issue. Uh, so you go to GitHub, Betaflight, GitHub, and then go into here and then log it as an issue right here. You could say, hey, I checked a bunch. This is what I came out with, so on and so forth. So that could be pretty helpful for the project. All right. Mm-hmm. SBR is a satellite receiver. I don't know. What's that? This cloud builder thing again? Hmm. What are we talking about? Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. All right. So if there are any other questions on that, if you have any troubles, let me know. Let's chewed up kind of half the stream with that, unfortunately. Let's get into log review here and see what we got. Again, if you are a patron and have any logs to take a look at, don't hesitate to throw them down in the office hours, or office hour, yeah, hours, part of the Discord here, and I will pull those up. Please mention it in the live chat, and I will take a look at those here live with you and give you my thoughts, for better for worse. But other than that, let's take a look at this one. And let me get set up here. Gmail.com. And I gotta switch. Count. Unity Tech. All right. What about Outlook? All right, so in this log, we're going to take a kind of just a cursory look through of some things that I would look for. We did this last time, so this is something somebody submitted to me. I got submitted to me a little while ago. It's actually kind of got lost in my spam filter, but I found it the other day, and I was like, oh, he did get back to me. So we're going to jump right on this one. So I'm pulling up his email here, and I want to, oh, that's why I'm at the wrong thing, outlook.com. And we'll take a look at this, see what the issues were, and go through it here. Is there any questions on, as I'm pulling this up, if there's any questions you have specifically on logs that you're looking at or what to look for while I have these examples up, that can be with Betaflight, any firmware that has any kind of logging, or just general questions. I see some people here using FetTech, Alpha, I guess, firmware, or KISS or whatnot. Please throw them my way. Don't hesitate to put that on there. And I'll shoot, sure to ask you. If you had a specific question and I'm not getting it and I'm not seeing it or saying something about it, don't hesitate to do at UAV Tech in the live chat so I see that. Again, any patrons, if you have anything that you're interested in uploading to that office hours live chat, I'll keep an eye on that. So with that said, let's look at what we got here in this person's log and see what the issues were. So let's try to keep some anonymity here and bring this up. So this person submitted a log for review. This is his final tune. His motors are not hot. It was used a heads up probes props 2138 because that's what I'm used to flying with. To be honest, it flies good, but maybe you can help about anything wrong I did. So it's just kind of a general review. How does this look? Obviously, always caveat that with if you find it flies well and you like it, that's all that really matters. But a lot of folks say, well, I feel like what it seems to me is a lot of folks are, I think this flies good. I think I like it, but can it be better? I see a lot of that stuff on the Blackbox Facebook group. So let's take a look at it. So this is a log. We got a couple. I don't have any HD, so this is going to be kind of seeing through them into the matrix here and seeing what we got. So we got a 1 second flight, 2 minute flight, and 21 second flight. So I'm going to pick that one, all three of those in the log. Knee-jerk reaction here is making sure that you can see here, right back here, I have the expo on. You guys need to move myself here. I mean, go here and then go like that. Maybe I should put myself like right there so you can see when expo is on versus off. That's probably helpful. So knee-jerk reaction here is that this is looking good. Whenever you see the motor traces, which is nice, what's nice in the configurator that even with expo on or off, you can see here the motor traces always look the same. So that's great. So when you see motor traces like this that are nice and flat, then you know off the bat your noise attenuation and or filtering, your raw noise and or your filter setup is really good on the quad. So we'll see which one it is. The other thing that a lot of times folks come in with, when especially in the summer, not so much right now in the northern hemisphere, it seems like there's more people. Obviously, our Australia friends right now are flying a lot, but there's, I believe, on the planet there's just more people in the northern hemisphere. That in the summer months, people say, "Oh, I got hot motors." A good way to see if it's your tune or filters or anything is just log a flight. And if it comes down hot, but then you open your black box and your motor traces look like this, it isn't your tune. It is not your vibrations. Maybe it's just hot outside, or it's overpropped. Or if you're just doing a bunch of hover moves, like hovering and doing a bunch of flips and a bunch of rolls and things like that, that will get your motors hot. It's just because you're exercising it. You know, when you're doing these flips and rolls, you can see that you know, like right here, it's ramping these motors. Motor one, you can see it up here. It's ramping it up to 100%, and that doing that back to back to back all the time is going to cause it to get warm because you're ramping it up. Now I'm seeing some things here. We'll talk about that in a second that we can probably make better. And I can see, let me see if there's any information on what size quad this is. Let's see it here. This is a, well, it's a 5-inch, right? Because it has 5138 props on it. So there you go. So it's a 5-inch quad. Okay. So that's looking sharp. It's looking good. Turn Expo on. Just kind of browse through this initially. I don't see anything of alarm. I'm trying to see if there's any spikes or anything like that. Anything where you hit anything. Kind of just taking a cursory look through. I see a bunch of step moves. Love it, love it. I see a bunch of, so it was roll axis on the top. Here's pitch axis here. And if you're not super familiar with logging, just to bring everybody along, this is our sticks here. This is the motors here. This is the green is the inputs. So you can see as I move the pitch stick forward, you can see how the green line goes up, and that is telling it, if I look on this graph over here, that's telling it to roll pitch forward at 252 degrees per second right at this moment. It looks like the fastest rate was 255. So you can align what you see here with what you see here. So you can see that when the green line goes up, that means pitch forward. When the green line goes back, you can see here, that means pitch back. And then you can apply that to the roll, pitch, and yaw axis. This is the UAV Tech Trace Templates number 4. If you're not familiar with the trace templates, you can always download go to theuavtech.com/Blackbox, and you'll see the trace templates and how to use those in there. And you can load those up and follow along if you're looking at your logs in the future. Okay, so that all looks good. Looks good here, and got a little something there. This probably some prop wash. Doesn't look like he hit anything. Got a little something going on there. This is where it's nice to have some HD along with it to see exactly what's happening there. But let's go over to here to the end. All right. So let's take a look at the raw noise. I don't see any bouncing at the end. I do see some crazy stuff happening in there. Generally, the tracking is pretty well. And the way I can say that is this is the input, is the dark green line. This here is what the quad's actually doing. So you can see, although that we're inputting in this spot, we're inputting to be at a on the pitch axis, right? Yeah, inputting to be at a negative 25 degrees per second. So that's a speed of rotation. It's actually doing 9. So it's going slower than the input, which obviously has a, there has a, like that's feel, right? When your inputs, when the quad is not doing what you're telling it to do with your fingers, that has a disconnected feel. You can get used to it if you stay on that same quad, because that specific quad will have a specific feel because it based on the specific tune that's on it. Maybe it's not really actually following your rates. So that will have a feel. But the problem with that, if you take your same rates, put it on a different quad, then it feels different. That's because that other quad you're used to doesn't really follow your rates. Now this one, maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't again. And it's not if it's not following, so your rates are a way to centralize the feel of your of flying across all the quads that you have for rotational speeds. Now there is other factors, right? The weight of the quad is going to have a difference in how much it throws, over trees and things like that if you're doing freestyle or racing around gates. So the weight, you just got the deal. There's no way to equalize that, but you can take out the rates part of it. If you can get these two things to match each other as much as possible all the time, then at least that's one part of the feel that you're getting consistent, and you can make consistent upon all your quads. So that all looks good. I didn't see any other moves. What we can also do here is go to trace template 0, so noise profiles, and see here if we have, yes, he has raw gyro recorded here. So that means that the in his black box, when he recorded that, he went into the debug mode and typed in gyro scale to record that additional data, which is great. And we can take a look at what that raw noise looks like, just again scanning through. When you see the little red lines and they're kind of short, that's good. So yeah, it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Don't see anything. Let's just take another picture of this and let's look at it as a whole. We can run these spectrographs. So this is what I do. So I think somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, I'm hopeful I can tune my 7-inch after watching this. This is exactly how I do it every time. Somebody sends me a log, kind of scan through it, look for, the first sweep is looking for problems. Is there a mechanical problem, a vibration problem with your quad? Because if there is, you want to try to address that first. And people skip that step and they want to fix everything with a tune. And you're pushing a rope up a hill. Don't do that. Make sure it's mechanically sound, or as sound as you want it to be. There's many times on a quad that's like, yeah, I listened to UAV Tech Mark and blah, blah, blah. And there's a little bit of stuff over here, but I don't know. I looked at the whole thing and I can't figure out how to make it any better. Well, then you're basically saying so you're establishing kind of like a baseline. Now that baseline, if it's like little stuff, no big deal. If it's big thing, like if your baseline, if you're of a really low standard for your baseline, you will get to a spot in your tune where it's like, well, I can't make this any more better. It's like, yeah, because of that mechanical thing is going to hinder you at this point, and you're kind of, it is what it is. So if you can get things squared as best you can, and this is a great example. This is a good quad. It's not perfect. I've seen lower noise performance. Like what we're looking for is right through here. You want to ignore generally this spike down here, unless you're doing a quad unless you know you didn't do prop wash moves. This is generally just prop wash from, I would say, 30 to 70. If you're lucky, it's 70. It's mostly 30, mostly in the 40s, like you can see here. 50, 60, mostly 60 hertz is just prop wash. When you're making hard moves and the quad shakes a little bit, that's generally at this frequency. So kind of ignore those spikes unless you're like, why? No, I didn't do prop wash moves. I didn't have, then don't ignore that spike. So for now, ignoring that. I did see that's probably what those spikes were earlier I was looking at. That's why it kind of scanned it. That's what those were here. And you can validate things, and I'll show you that in a second. The biggest thing we're looking for right here is this trough that from generally 70, 80 hertz. You know, the prop wash can go up to like 80. It's rare, man. I mean, you have a really tuned in when you're to get it's essentially what we're trying to do is get prop wash. So instead of it's 40, 50 hertz, we're trying to get it above 60, because above 60 hertz, you're not really gonna see it. You will hear it, but you won't really see it, especially if your frame rate on your feed, camera feed, or even if you're posting on YouTube, it gets washed out in the frame rate because you're only doing 60 frames per second. So 60 hertz is 60 frames per second. So it kind of gets skipped over. That's why many times you can't see prop wash in your analog feed, Canon HD, but you do see it in your GoPro because of the frame rate's higher. So generally, you're trying to get this prop wash up higher with tuning. That's essentially kind of the gold standard. But anyways, you want this trough in here. I usually don't get too worried about here with the noise spikes. So if that's if you see this, a bunch of noise up in here and it's getting, you know, into the orange and into the red, sometimes people are like, oh, is that bad? It's like, well, it's not, it's okay. Like that's a compromise I would not worry about. As long as you have a big trough here, and this noise gets into maybe the orange or the red, but if it's very peaked, like some of the quads I've seen, it's like really high, like up here, and it's very peaked. It means it's like that, not like this, where it's like this broad band, but it's very peaky. Then the notch filters jump on it and it crushes it out, and it's not a big deal. So that's like oh well, it could be better, sure, yeah, but I wouldn't worry about it. It's not going to really limit your tune. This being a mess down here, this will definitely big time limit your tune. So if you come into here, you know, click these little roll pitch, you know, these raw gyro, and you can see I'm looking at the roll axis. Now I'm looking at the pitch. Now I'm looking at the yaw, and I see a bunch of broad bass noise, kind of like this. Look at this, for example. See how this is a bunch of broad bass stuff down here? And it's always weird because my screens are the opposite. Like I look that way to look at the screen. I should be looking this way. So it should work out kind of ish. But I keep looking back at the at my camera over here. Anyways, if you have this kind of broad-based stuff on pitch or roll, it's gonna have more effect. So this is, if I would see something like this on pitch or roll, that's kind of pushing it. Especially if it's getting to the orange, that's really bad. But on yaw, the reason it doesn't really hurt it, because we don't use the D term on yaw. At least I wouldn't recommend it. And so it doesn't really hurt it on yaw, but on pitch or roll it would. So this is if you saw it on pitch or roll, but seeing something like this is fine. This is fine. Again, this is great for pitch and roll. It's a little bit more peaked, but it's, again, not a big deal. Sometimes people ask, and I don't cover enough. I feel like it's a foregone thing. You never have to worry about this down here. This is the raw motion. This is you moving the sticks around. That's why it's so high in amplitude, because you're, you know, telling it 1,000 degrees per second. So this is just you moving the quad. So you can see our control frequencies, 0 to 10, you know, 15 hertz, something like that. So that's kind of that range. Okay, so looking decent there. Going back to that prop wash thing, if you wanted to confirm, you can just measure these things too. So see where that was all janky. It looked like a spot right there. You can see we're getting quite a bit of wash. Like this is a pretty big offset. You know, this is what he's commanding the quad to do right here. But you can see what it's actually doing is oscillating. It's going roof, roof. It's going left, and then right, and then left again, and then kind of, so it's like it basically did a shake. Now it's really quick. It was like a little bit of a shake there, but got a shake on roll, shake on pitch. If you want to see if that's that, you can hit M for mark point, and then you can measure over, and you can see that that was at 60 hertz. See that? So that's a little bit of wash. That's how you know. Like if you had some HD, you could kind of line it up. Be like, how do I know that that's prop wash? Well, just line it up with your HD, and then you can see. You can just measure peak to peak, and that's what that spectrograph thing is doing. A little bit of prop wash there, a little bit there. So let's get into yeah, Twitches. See if there's any questions here. I thought it defaults were supposed to be. Looks like Delta is working with somebody else in the chat on something, I guess, if that's what I'm assuming, because I don't think that's questions for me, which is okay. If I'm mistakenly reading that because I'm kind of skimming these, let me know. I'm not trying to ignore you. I think you're getting troubleshooting from somebody else. So yeah, a twitch in mechanical or a tune issue on coaxial octocopter. Twitch mechanical or a tuning issue. So you have a Athix, I guess it's Athix. FPV is saying he has a twitch in mechanical or a tuning issue on a coaxial. What the heck is a coaxial? Is that what we call when the motors are mounted on the same arm or reversed from each other, like they do on a cine, not a cine, but a I can't remember what they're called. Brain fart. But anyways, it's so it's a rig, yeah, a Komodo, something you're flying with Komodo. So let me touch that. Let me finish this up, and then we'll talk about that here at the end. Okay, so vibrations decent. As long as the vibrations are good, your tune, you're on the right. It's all about the vibrations. So as long as they're good, you're in good shape here. Let's go back. I noticed some things. If I go back to stick tracking here, we can start to look at the tune itself. You can always hit the H key. So here, when you're looking at this kind of stuff, it's probably better to turn off Expo. And then you can see like some of that stuff. See how this didn't quite get up to target, but then kind of, overshot a little bit. Everything's a blur there. I don't know that it's that critical, but we do have some overshooting down here. See that right here? You can see that overshoot. That shouldn't do that. Let me see if there's anything else that jumps out at me. So that's it. See how we have some slight overshooting here? Now you have to have Expo on to see it. You see how there's some slight overshooting? Those are signs of something we can improve in the tune. This one looks okay, so that hard move. Let's go back. So these hard full rate moves are good. You're trying to draw out like indicators, and a good way to do that is really try to push the quad on a tune. So we're really looking at that kind of stuff. Kind of zooming in on those. A little bit overshoot there, no big deal. Everything's a blur. That first one was off, but these other ones look pretty good. We're trying to look that, moving the green line, and then this gyro one here is following it. And then you got roll and then pitch. Those are looking decent, looking decent, looking decent. We know this is a 5-inch. Got some motor. Here's another good one. Good job. He's doing throttle pumps. This is a good one to see if his how well his anti-gravity is tuned. So these are other moves you do. And you can see the nose is moving a little bit. You don't have any movement on roll. That's great. Not really anything on yaw, I don't think. Hold on. So I got to hover over these just to see. Yeah, no, yaw looks pretty tight. It's following the green line, so you can see how it kind of highlights that. A little bit on pitch, but not bad. Probably can hardly see it. Here was a little bit more in that pump. So you could, I don't see any in these hard throttle moves. I don't see any oscillations starting here on either side of this. So we could bring up anti-gravity just a little bit more. We'll see what that setting is here in a second. because it's doing well, but maybe it could do a little bit better by bringing up anti-gravity. So that's a note. Got prop wash there. We noticed that was a little bit heavy. So I'd like to look at that a little bit better. He's got some input, stepped input yaw moves here. So he's, kind of yawing to the left, yawing to the right, yawing to the left. See the tracking there. It's looking pretty good. You'll see in yaw many times you'll get something like this. That's typically, you'll see this maybe flat lines, and that's typically just you don't have any more yaw authority. And yeah, here we're getting off a little bit. So that's yeah, it's all right. Honestly, this is, we're doing full rate yaw moves here. So it's tracking decent. There's a couple blips and blobs there, but it's still tracking pretty good. Cross access, so even in these hard yaw moves, you're seeing that the pitch is staying on track. And the roll's coming off a little bit. So let's take that into consideration. And I will bring this to an end here. This is where I want to get my sharp roll inputs. And they are slightly exceeding the target. Yeah, you can see it here slightly. It's ever so slight, but you can see here, and it's hard to see with Expo on. You can always click these little pluses here, and that will just look at this axis specifically. And then you can see how we overshot the target here. Overshot the target here, overshot the target there, overshot the target there, overshot the target there. So these are these little stepped inputs. Let's go back to roll. I'm developing an opinion of what he should do, or what I would do. Here it's overshooting the target ever so slightly, but not too bad. So a little bit less on roll, but a little bit more overshooting of the target on pitch. So let's wrap this up because it is 12 o'clock. What I would do. So looking at the log here and the settings we have, what I would recommend is increasing the D term here a little bit more. So let's bring up the configurator and just use this play controller for an example. Bring this over to here. And this is typically what I will do. So let's get these to match. You can see here's our slider position. So my PI slider is at a 0.9. My I is at a 1. My D is at a 1. My feed forward is at a 1.1. So I'm just matching what he has. And then the master is a 1.3. Just save that in. Got anti-gravity as a... he's on 4.3, as he should be. This is 4.4, so the scan is a little different. So I'm just going to put this back to a 4, but 8, you wouldn't use 8. So we're going to stay on 4.3 here for the anti-gravity stuff. The filtering looks pretty good. Let's see what we got. So we have the, move this over a little bit more. The gyro low pass 1 is off. You can see the gyro low pass 2 is on. This is set at a 1.2. So you can see that here by once you see this cutoff is off, that's how I know this is off. Once I see this at 600, I'm looking for this to be at 600. Then I look down here and see the slider position's on at 1.2, 1.2. These are the static notches. They're off as normal, 0, 0, 0. This is the RPM filter. You can see a Q500, that's a CLI thing, just leave that alone. 150's fine there, 600's fine there, 300, or this is dynamic notch. I'm sorry, this is RPM filter, 3 harmonics, so that's this setting, that. Sorry, he has this at 1. And then I have my RPM notches off here. I guess I could go turn those off. But the harmonics are set at 3, and then we have this at 100. The D-term low-pass filters are set as shown right here, and we should be good. So that is his filter setup. Is there any tweaks I would make to that? Um, the only tweak I think I would recommend making to this is probably don't need 3. It's not going to save that much difference, so it's not that big of a deal, but I'd probably put this to 2 for harmonic. So if I had the dynamic notch turned on here, gotta go in here, or RPM notches, set this to bidirectional, hit agree, just save and reboot, come right back into this. I would go into here, and he has this at 3. I might bring that down to 2. Not going to be that much difference. He has is the yaw low pass on? Let's see. It's in here somewhere. I think the yaw low pass being on is probably good. If that is on, I can see it in here. It's jumping out at me. I can't remember where it's at. Filter. Yeah, yaw is 100, so we're good there. Just leave that. That was the only tweak there. You could raise. I guess the only other thing I would do if you really wanted to push it, but I wouldn't do it right now, is you could turn this low pass filter 2 off altogether and just go with the notches. That may be not work out. This low pass 2 at 600 hertz is not really doing much. I know it's the anti-aliasing filter, but typically there's not a ton of aliasing issues that I ever really see, so I wouldn't worry about that all too much. But let's see down here. We are running 8K, 4K. So that is this an F7? Yeah. So that's one thing I would change. I would go into the configurator and then change this to run 8K, 8K. You have an F7? Go for it. You don't need to run 8K, 4K, so you can go up higher. So go for that. And if you're out there, if you have an H7 board, I would definitely run 8K, 8K. I did testing on this, and surprisingly to me, it made prop wash performance a little bit better. That has to deal somewhat with how filters react differently at the higher rates. So you can be offset just by, if you're at 8K and then 4K, you can just raise your filters up a little bit more to kind of offset that. But with the same amount of filtering, if you just increase your PID loop frequency, it has an effect on the filtering and how the filtering maths work a little bit. And you should see prop wash performance increase without changing your filtering. Again, if you can't do that, you could just slide up your filters as well. So since he has it, then you don't have to worry about any of the anti-aliasing stuff. And then again, you could take a look at turning that low pass filter off. So this low pass 2. So maybe check that out. Before I would do that though, I would come into the PIDs tab. And the 2 things I would tweak on this is I would take your anti-gravity up to maybe like a 5. See how that works? In Betaflight 4.3 and 4.4, it's different. It's actually a higher setting, so it'd probably be like, I have to look back. I think it's like an 8 or a 9. The other thing I would do is increase, I think, the damping on the quad overall. We saw a little bit of overshooting on the roll axis, so this will increase the damping for both pitch and roll. You can see that right here. See how it's changing both numbers. So take that up to a 1.1. And then I would take the damping just on pitch and bring that up maybe to a 1.1 as well. So we're going to increase dampening on both axes, but then we're going to increase damping on just the pitch a little bit more, because we saw that one overshooting a little bit more. The next thing after I would go fly that just like this. Then I would come back, if that seemed okay or a little bit better, then I would come back in and turn off gyro low pass 2, save that, go fly it again. See if that's a little bit better. After that point, if that's flying good, when you turn this one off down here, you may know it gets a little twitchy. You may notice when it's on the ground, it gets a little twitchy. So if you don't like that, you can always turn that back on. But if you're keeping with that, both the filtering, I'd still do this either way. You're not going to notice any negative ramifications of that. Once those two things are implemented, the third flight I would do is whether you turn the filtering on or leave it off like I showed there, is then start to work up this master slider until you start to hear one of the axes flutter. You'll start to hear the quad flutter a little bit when you get into a prop wash move. Once you get to that point, log that, come back, look in the log, and you will see that flutter action. So you can zoom out and you'll see the flutter action here. Find out which axis it is. If it is just your roll axis, which typically is the case, then what you can do is you can move these two sliders up together, the pitch axis. So if you'd move this up to a 1.1, you'd move this up to a 1.2. So you work the master up to, this will, as you're moving the master up in this last stage, it's going to increase your prop wash performance. As you're moving the master up, that will move all the gains up. Then you'll get to a spot where roll typically will start to flutter. Then you have to usually move this down, maybe it went up to a 1.5 and it started to do that. You maybe have to move this down to a 1.4 or a 1.3, and then work your pitch axis up to get basically to that same flutter point. At that point, you have your max gains on roll, you have your max gains on pitch, you have your damping squared away for stepped inputs and moves, and your filtering is at a minimum. It's basically as good as it's going to get. From that point, if you want prop wash performance to be any better, you have to use lighter props or motors with more torque. So that's the input I would give on this log. Hopefully that helped you guys out, just kind of walking through that with everybody. Yeah, address any questions anybody might have. And we'll wrap this sucker up a little bit past the stream time at this point. Okay, Brandon asks, what do you think about D first tuning method? I think it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. I mean, I'm pretty confident. Chris I was the first one to talk about these relationships. I'm sure, Brandon, you know this, but I was the first one to talk about the relationships between the P, the D, and the I, and all, how it's the relationships between the terms, not the absolute, blah, 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 blah. So I think Chris, Rosser looked at that and said, okay, well, I was always looking to do the pitch roll balance and then move all the gains up together first. I still stand, that's how I do it. Does it hurt to do the other way? I don't think so. I think you can move your gains up first. But I'm just so used to doing it the other way, where I look to see if there's overshoots, get that squared away, then I just move all the gains up to get to that flutter point. If you are, I guess, to move the D first up, especially in KISS, if you work to just move your D gains up first and then come back to address your PD balance, that flutter point might be a false flutter point because KISS tends to flutter on P oscillation way more than Betaflight. So it could be a false flag. I've not seen it be in Betaflight is susceptible to that, but it could happen where if you're not addressing your PD ratio first and then moving all your gains up, when you get to that flutter point, I mean, you can look in Blackbox to see, like, is that a P term or a D term oscillation? But it gives you this spot where it's like, I don't know. And if you're not using Blackbox, I think it's much easier to look for your overshoots, move your P's up, move your tracking slider up here. If you're not using Blackbox, move your tracking slider up until when you do sharp inputs or flips and rolls and you get that bounce back, move it, up to where you get some bounce back and then bring it back a little bit. You can hear for the bounce back. And you can see it in logging. And then from there, once you have that PD balance, the balance between these two, so you can move this one down or this one up, whichever you want to do. Once you get that squared away, then move all your gains up. And since you have that PD balance squared away, it's D term oscillation because you have your P term in check. I mean, the gains work. Filters affect D term. D term affects how much P term. Filters limit. I mean, this is not an opinion. This is a fact. Filters limit how high a D gains you can have. The amount of D gain you have limits how high a P gain you can have. The how high a P gain you have limits how high the I gain can be. They work in that direction and in that direction only. So I think that's where we're, the D first, then P and all that kind of stuff. But that balance between the two, between the D and the P, if you don't have that squared first and you hear those oscillations, it could be a P term oscillation versus a D term oscillation. That's why I used to do it that way. But I think you can do both methods in it. I know it works for many both ways. Yeah, I term oscillate. Yeah. Yeah, usually I is almost is you want to have a minimum I as possible. Brandon Bean talks about I term. Okay, well that's it. Unless there's any other questions, we're 15 minutes past. Thanks everybody for sticking around. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you do have follow-up questions, you're seeing this in post, please don't hesitate to drop those in the comments. I do take a look at that. Again, thanks to all of my Patreon supporters out there. Well, you guys support really keeps things going. So always appreciate that. Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day, and I hope this helped.